Welcome back. So today we're starting out with our Chapter 3 material, which we're dealing with pairs of lines and angles. So this is going to go on page 99 of your notebook. You should have a packet that looks like this. So we're actually going to be cutting these pieces apart so that we get a flip book that looks like that. Alright, so what you're going to do first is when you're looking at your packet, you're going to cut off the sides. Do not cut off the top. Do not cut that space. You're just going to cut off these side pieces to begin with, and then I'll show you the next step. So go ahead and pause the video and do that piece, and then we'll be right back. Okay, so I've cut the edges off of all three of my pieces of paper. So then the next step is I'm going to cut each of these in half. So just along this line in the middle, I'm going to cut each of these in half. So go ahead and cut those, and then we'll be right back. Alright, so now we have all of those cut. So I have 6 different squares that we're working with, and you'll notice on these different ones there's a section that it says to cut out. So now we're going to cut out that piece. I do have this one page here that says more angle pairs. There's nothing down here for me to cut out, so that one's going to stay the same, but the rest of these we're going to cut out all of those chunks that it says to cut out, and we'll be right back. Alright, so now that I have all those cut, now I'm going to assemble my flip book. So the top page is the one that says relationships between lines. The second page says pairs of lines down at the bottom. Then lines in space. Then the one that has the parallel and perpendicular symbol on it. The next one says angle pairs. And then the last one is the one that says more angle pairs that we didn't cut. So then what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to line up everything on the bottom. Square that up so that it should look like this. And I'm actually, instead of gluing that top piece, I'm actually just going to staple mine. So you're welcome to staple it or glue it, whichever you would prefer. And then on the back of it, then you're going to glue that into your book. And again, this is going to go on page 99 in your notebook. Okay, page 99 in your notebook. Okay, so then let's get into our flip book. So I'll zoom in just a little bit here. So our first one, we're going to be dealing with some pairs of lines. Some different pairs of lines here. So we have some vocabulary terms. We're going to go ahead and fill those in. So the first one is parallel lines. What are parallel lines? Well, that's going to be 2 lines that do not intersect and they are coplanar. Okay, so they're in the same plane and they do not intersect. The symbol that we use is these 2 slashes. Okay, so that's our symbol that we use there. So then the next one is perpendicular lines. We have talked about both parallel and perpendicular before, but I just wanted to make sure that we had it in our flip book. So perpendicular, we still have 2 lines. This time they intersect. So 2 lines that intersect to make right angles. And our symbol for this one, and we've talked about that before, that's the upside down capital T. Okay, so these intersect to make right angles. So that's why we put that little box there to show that that's a right angle. Then the last one that we have is skew lines. So skew lines, these are 2 lines that do not intersect and are not coplanar. Okay, so parallel, we said they're 2 lines that do not intersect, but they are in the same plane. They are coplanar. This time, these are 2 lines that do not intersect, and they are not in the same plane. They are not in the same plane. Okay? All right, so an example of skew would be if we had, let's take my book that I have here. So this edge over here, and then this edge coming up from the corner of my book. So these are not parallel lines. One's going this way, one's going up and down, but they will never intersect. They're not in the same plane, they're not parallel to each other, but they will still never intersect. So that's an example of skew. All right. So then let's go on to the next. So this one is lines in space. So we're going to answer some questions that we have here using those vocabulary terms that we just talked about. Okay, so we have a box. We're going to use that to answer all of these questions. So with this box, we're going to name 3 lines parallel to EH. EH is this front edge of my box. So 3 lines that are parallel to that. Well, the back edge of the box would be parallel. So that's F, G, and remember to do a line, we have arrows on both ends. This one that's straight above it, so this is the bottom front, this is the top front, that would also be parallel, and that's A, D. And then the last one is going to be this back line on the top, so that's BC. Okay? So then the next one says, are any of these lines parallel to each other? Are any of these lines AD, BC, FG, EH, are they parallel to each other? Yes. They are all parallel. Okay? So if AD is parallel to EH and FG is parallel to EH, then AD also has to be parallel to FG. So that's that transitive property that we've been working with. And the same thing could be done with BC back here. All right, so the next one, what is the relationship between BF? So BF is this side back here, and DC. DC is over here. Okay, so let's think about the relationship there. Are they parallel? Okay, are they in the same plane first? Well, they're not in the same plane. B is in the same plane with DC, but the F portion is not. Okay, so they're not in the same plane, so they can't be parallel. We're looking at perpendicular. Do they form a right angle? No, they don't look like they intersect. Well, if they don't intersect and they're not in the same plane, then they are called skew. They are called skew. The next one, we're going to name a line that is skew to AE. AE is right here. So a line that would be skew to that. So not parallel, so that counts out DH, CG, and BF. Can't be one of those. Those are parallel. Perpendicular would be AD, so it can't be that one. EH is also perpendicular, so it couldn't be that one. We could also have EF and AB would be perpendicular, so it can't be those. So we have to look for the ones that we did not already look at. So that's going to give us from AE, we could have DC. It's not parallel, it's not perpendicular, but it's still not going to intersect. Okay, so there's one. Well, what about GH? GH is still not going to intersect with it, and they are not parallel, so we can put GH. And then we have over here on this side GF. So we've got one coming up this way and one across the back, so that would also be skew, so GF would be another one that we could put there. And then the last one would be BC. BC. Okay? Alright, so then the next one says name a plane parallel to plane EFG. EFG, that's the bottom of the box. So name a plane that is parallel to that. Well, parallel to the bottom would be the top of my box. So that's going to be plane. We have A, B, C, or D, so we need to use 3 of those letters. So I'm just going to use A, B, C. Any 3 of those letters would work to name that top, though. The next one says we're going to name a plane that contains E. Okay, so contains point E, and is parallel to plane BCGF. So BCGF, that's the back. Okay, so we're going to name a plane that contains E and is parallel to the back. Well, that's going to be the front of the box. So we have letters A, D, H, E, or K, any of those letters. So we just need 3 of them. So I'm going to call this A, D, H. So that's plane A, D, H. The next one says name a line perpendicular to GH. So perpendicular to GH and contains point T. So that's going to be this line back here. We need 2 letters to write a line. So you could use C, T, or G. So I'm going to use CT. CT, and then my line symbol. Then the last one, there is an error here. It should say name a plane, not a plan. Name a plane perpendicular to plane AKEH. AKEH. So that's this front one. So we want a plane perpendicular to that. So that could be plane on the right hand side, CDH, or it could be the one on the left side, which is ABF. So this is plane, could be CDH or ABF. Either of those would work there. Either of those would work. Okay, so let's keep going here. So the next page of our flip book, we're dealing with our parallel postulate. I'm going to highlight that. Our parallel postulate says if there is a line and a point not on that line, then there is exactly one line through the point that is parallel to the given line. So if we have a line and a point not on that line, there is exactly one line that can go through P that's going to be parallel to line L. There's one and only one. Okay? So that's our parallel postulate. So then we also have a perpendicular postulate. So I'm going to highlight that one as well. Our perpendicular postulate says if there is a line and a point not on that line, then there is exactly one line through that point that is perpendicular to the given line. So we have our given line L down here. We have our point that's not on the line. That's P. So it's saying that there's only one line through point P that's going to be exactly perpendicular to line L. There's one and only one line that will go through P and connect to L and be perpendicular. Okay? A couple postulates to add to our list. So then we have some different kind of angle pairs. So we've talked about vertical angles and adjacent angles, complementary, supplementary. Well, we have some more types of angles here, so we're going to look at a few of these. So the first one that we have, these are called corresponding angles. So our corresponding angles are two angles, are corresponding angles when they have corresponding positions. So what that means, angle 1 and angle 5, they're both in the top left position of their angle cluster. Okay? So angle 1 and angle 5 would be an example. Another pair of corresponding angles would be 2 and 6. They're both in the top right position. So angle 2 and angle 6. They're both in the top right position of their cluster. We could also say 3 and 7. Those are both in the bottom left position. So angle 3 and angle 7 would also be corresponding. And then the last one would be 4 and 8. They are both in the bottom right position. So angle 4 and angle 8 would also be corresponding because they are in the bottom right position on their clusters. Okay? All right, so let's keep moving here. So the next one I'm going to look at is going to be consecutive interior angles. Consecutive interior angles. So what that means is two angles are consecutive interior angles when they lie between the two lines and on the same side of the transversal T. Okay, so we're going to talk about what a transversal is in addition here. So if you want to go ahead and go to the top part of our flip book here, so just right up above, and we're going to define a transversal. So a transversal. So that is a line that intersects two or more coplanar lines at different points. Okay, so then when we look back down here on our picture, this line here is intersecting two lines at two different points. So that is why T is considered our transversal. So we want two angles that lie between these two lines, so inside, and are on the same side of the transversal. So an example of that would be 3 and 5. 3 and 5 are on the left side of my transversal and inside of my two lines. Another example of our consecutive interiors would be 4 and 6. 4 and 6, because they are on the right-hand side of the transversal and on the inside. And angle 6. Okay, we have a couple of these type of angle pairs that we're going to talk about. So let's move to the last page of our flip book. So on this one, we're dealing with our alternate interior angles. So our alternate interior angles, so we're still looking at the interior. We have two angles, our alternate interior angles when they lie between our two lines again, but now they're on opposite sides of the transversal. So an example of that would be 4 and 5. 4 and 5. And also 3 would go with 6. Okay, so angle 4 and 5 and angle 5, those would be alternate interiors. And then angle 3 and angle 6 would be alternate interiors. So then when we go to the last one, which is our alternate exteriors, we're going to be doing the same thing. They're on opposite sides of our transversal, but this time they lie on the outside of the two lines. The outside of the two lines. So that's going to be angle 1 and angle 8, as well as angle 2 would go with angle 7. So alternate exterior means they're on the outside of our two lines and on opposite sides of the transversal. So angle 1 and angle 8, and angle 2 and angle 7. Okay? All right, so that is all I have for you today. Just as a reminder, this goes on page 99 in your notebook. Have a great day. Bye.